Good morning. This morning I'm going to read the second sermon to the dead from Dr. Jung's 7 Sermons to the Dead, which is found in the Red Book by C.G. Jung. I'm reading from the Reader's Edition, starting in page 515. Now, this sermon and the next one are sermons that will boggle the Western mind, but nonetheless, they're very powerful. And it's important to remember here that Dr. Jung is talking about the evolution of the human psyche itself. And so I will read. That night Philemon stood beside me, and the dead drew near and lined the walls and cried out, "We want to know about God. Where is God? Is God dead?" But Philemon rose and said, and this is the second sermon of the dead, "God is not dead. He is as alive as ever. God is creation, for he is something definite and therefore differentiated from the pleroma. God is a quality of the pleroma, and everything I have said about creation also applies to him. But he is distinct from creation in that he is much more indefinite and indeterminable. He is less differentiated than creation, since the ground of his essence is effective fullness. Only insofar as he is definite and differentiated is he creation, and as such he is the manifestation of the effective fullness of the pleroma. Everything that we do not differentiate falls into the pleroma and is canceled out by its opposite. If therefore we do not differentiate God, effective fullness is canceled out for us. Moreover, God is the pleroma itself, just as each smallest point in the created and uncreated is the pleroma itself. Effective emptiness is the essence of the devil. God and devil are the first manifestations of nothingness, which we call the pleroma. It makes no difference whether the pleroma exists or not, since it cancels itself out completely. Not so creation. Insofar as God and the devil are created beings, they do not cancel each other out, but stand one against the other as effective opposites. We need no proof of their existence. It is enough that we have to keep speaking about them. Even if both were not, creation would forever distinguish them anew out of the pleroma on account of their distinct essences. Everything that differentiation takes out of the pleroma is a pair of opposites. Therefore, the devil always belongs to God. This inseparability is most intimate and, as you know from experience, is indissoluble in your life as the pleroma itself, since both stand very close to the pleroma, in which all opposites are canceled out and united. Fullness and emptiness, generation and destruction, are what distinguish God and the devil. Effectiveness is common to both. Effectiveness joins them. Effectiveness, therefore, stands above both and is a God above God, since it unites fullness and emptiness through its effectuality. This is a God you knew nothing about, because mankind forgot him. We call him by his name, Abraxas. He is even more indefinite than God and the devil. To distinguish him from God, we call God Helios, or sun. Abraxas is effect. Nothing stands opposed to him but the ineffective. Hence, his effective nature unfolds itself freely. The ineffective neither exists nor resists. Abraxas stands above the sun and above the devil. He is improbable probability, that which takes unreal effect. If the pleroma had an essence, Abraxas would be in manifest. If the pleroma had an essence, Abraxas would be its manifestation. He is the effectual itself, not any particular effect, but effect in general. He takes unreal effect because he has no definite effect. He is also creation, since he is distinct from the pleroma. The sun has a definite effect, and so does the devil. Therefore, they appear to us more effective than the indefinite Abraxas. He is force, duration, change. The dead now raised a great tumult, for they were Christians. But when Philemon had ended his speech, one after another the dead also stepped back into the darkness once more, and the noise of their outrage gradually died away in the distance. When all the clamor had passed, I turned to Philemon and exclaimed, "Pity us, wisest one. We take from men the gods to whom they pray. You take alms from the beggar, bread from the hungry, fire from the freezing." Philemon answered and said, My son, these dead have had to reject the belief of the Christians, and therefore they can pray to no God. So should I teach them a God in whom they can believe and to whom they can pray? That is precisely what they have rejected. Why did they reject it? They had to reject it because they could do no otherwise. They had to reject it because they could not do otherwise. And why they have no other choice? Because the world, without these men knowing it, entered into that month of the great year where one should believe only what one knows. That is difficult enough, but it is also a remedy for the long sickness that arose from the fact that one believed what one did not know. I teach them the God whom both I and they know of without being aware of him, a God in whom one does not believe and to whom one does not pray, but of whom one knows. I teach this God to the dead, since they desired entry and teaching, but I do not teach him to living men, since they did not desire my teaching. Why indeed should I teach them? Therefore I take away from them no kindly hearer of prayers, their Father in heaven. What concern is my foolishness to the living? The dead need salvation, since they are a great waiting flock, hovering over their graves, and long for the knowledge that belief and the rejection of belief have breathed their last. But whoever has fallen ill and is near death wants knowledge, and he sacrifices pardon. It appears, I replied, as if you teach a terrible and dreadful God beyond measure, to whom good and evil and human suffering and joy are nothing. My son, said Philemon, did you not see that these dead had a God of love and rejected him? Should I teach them a loving God? They had to reject him after already having long since rejected the evil God, whom they call the devil. Therefore, they must know a God to whom everything created is nothing, because he himself is the creator and everything created, and the destruction of everything created. Have they not rejected a God who is a father, a lover, good and beautiful? One whom they thought to have particular qualities and a particular being. Therefore I must teach a God to whom nothing can be attributed, who has all qualities and therefore none, because only I and they know such a God. But how, O my Father, can men unite in such a God? Does the knowledge of such a God not amount to destroying human bonds and every society based on the good and the beautiful? Philemon answered, these dead rejected the God of love, of the good and the beautiful. They had to reject him, and so they rejected unity and community in love, in the good and the beautiful. And thus they killed one another and dissolved the community of men. Should I teach them the God who united them in love and whom they rejected? Therefore I teach them the God who dissolves unity, who blasts everything human, who powerfully creates and mightily destroys. Those whom love does not unite, fear compels. And as Philemon spoke these words, he went down swiftly to the ground, touched it with his hand, and disappeared. Okay, so that is the reading of the second sermon. There are some relevant footnotes. I'll respond to any questions or comments you may have. Okay, so this sermon was written, and this was an act of imagination that Dr. Jung was conducting in his psyche, and it was written on January 31, 1916. And I come back to the text, which says, we want to know about God. Where is God? Is God dead? The footnote reads, for Nietzsche's discussion of the death of God, see The Gay Science, paragraph 108 and 125, and Thus Spoke Zarathustra, section 4, retired from service, page 271 and following. For Jung's discussion of this, see Psychology and Religion, collected work 11, paragraph 142 and following. Jung commented, quote, when Nietzsche said God is dead, he expressed a truth which is valid for the greater part of Europe. Paragraph 145. To Nietzsche's statement, Jung noted, however, it would be more correct to say, he has disturbed our image, and where will we find him again? He goes on to discuss the motif of death and disappearance of God in connection with Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. And then in this sermon, Dr. Jung has introduced the name Abraxas, which is, Abraxas was a Mithraic god, and in this book, Ion researches into the phenomenology of the self. Dr. Jung has put this picture, and this is the Mithraic god Ion, and I believe that also represents Abraxas. That's a Roman statue from the 2nd and 3rd century. And so let me read the footnote about Abraxas. In 1932, Jung commented on Abraxas. The Gnostic symbol Abraxas a made-up name meaning 365. The Gnostics used it as the name of their supreme deity. He was a time god. The philosophy of Bergson, La Dore Creatrice, is an expression of the same idea. Jung described him in a way that echoes his description here. Just as this archetypal world of the collective unconscious is exceedingly paradoxical, always yea and nay, that figure of Abraxas means the beginning and the end. It is life and death. Therefore, it is represented by a monstrous figure. It is a monster because it is the life of vegetation in the course of 1 year, the spring and the autumn, the summer and the winter, the yea and the nay of nature. So Abraxas is really identical with the demiurgos, the world creator, and as such, he is surely identical with Purusha and with Shiva. Jung added that Abraxas is usually represented with the head of a fowl, the body of a man, and the tail of a serpent. But there is also the lion's head symbol with the dragon's body, the head crowned with the 12 rays, alluding to the number of months. According to St. Irenaeus, Basilides held that the ruler of them is named Abraxas, and that is why this ruler has the number 365 within it. Abraxas figured in Albert Dieterich's work, Abraxas Studien zur Religion. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the name, but it's Albert Dieterich. And the footnote goes on. This is from Sonusham Dasani. Jung studied this work closely earlier in 1913, and his copy is annotated. Jung also had a copy of Charles King's The Gnostics and Their Remains. And there are marginal annotations next to the passage discussing the etymology of Abraxas. Okay. And there's one other point that's important. On page 518, because the world, without these men knowing it, entered into that month of the great year where one should believe only what one knows. And the footnote says the reference is to the Platonic month. Now, a Platonic month is about 2100 and some years, and so a Platonic year is about 24,000 years, and so he was referring to the Platonic month, which also appears in astrology. So I'm going to discontinue the reading at this point. If there are any comments or questions, I'll take them, but otherwise I'm having a call from my wife, so I'm going to discontinue for today.